£2.4 million, not for a hospital wing, not for flood relief or community housing or any of the thousand things that money could do in the world. £2.4 million to erase, to physically demolish a renovation, to divide rooms back into what they were before, and then perhaps find someone who actually wants to live there. Because after more than 2 years of sitting completely vacant, nobody does. That is where we begin today. But here is the detail most people completely missed in the coverage, because buried beneath the headlines about reversed renovations and demolished walls, there is a single sentence from a single source that tells you more about what is truly happening here than anything else that was written. I will come back to it in just a few minutes, and once I explain it, none of this story will read the same way again. To understand why a cottage in Windsor carries this much emotional weight, we go back to 2018. Harry and Meghan had just married, and Queen Elizabeth, in what was publicly framed as a gesture of welcome, gifted them Frogmore Cottage. It was a Windsor estate property with history and location, but it was not in any condition to be moved into without serious work. The renovation that followed cost approximately £2.4 million, drawn from the sovereign grant. And the property was genuinely transformed. And remember, this is the same couple who, when they stepped back from royal duties in 2020, agreed without dispute to repay every pound of that renovation money, not because the law required it, because they chose to. They did it. And when King Charles evicted them from Frogmore Cottage in early 2023, just weeks after the publication of Harry's memoir, they walked away from a home they had already paid for. They left the United Kingdom with no residence of their own there. They have not had one since. The house went empty. Prince Andrew was reportedly offered the property during negotiations over his departure from Royal Lodge. He declined. No one else stepped in. Frogmore Cottage has been vacant for over 2 years, an empty home inside the grounds of Windsor, costing money to maintain and housing nothing but the echo of a decision that the institution made and cannot simply undo. But that is just the beginning. The plan, reported first by The Sun and then picked up by the New York Post, the Mirror, the Daily Mail, and GB News, is to reverse the renovation entirely. Experts are currently evaluating whether the property can be returned to its original configuration as 2 semi-detached homes. Sources confirm to The Sun that this reversal would require, in their exact words, substantial and costly building work. Let that sit for a moment. £2.4 million to renovate. Repaid in full by Harry and Meghan. And now an additional separate round of spending to undo what they already paid for. 3 rounds of expenditure on the same property, still empty, still waiting for someone to want it. One source put the logic plainly. Maybe, they said, if any trace of Harry and Meghan is removed, someone within the royal household will eventually want to live there. Read that sentence again. The plan is contingent on erasure. The hope is not that someone will love the cottage as it stands. The hope is that if the couple's presence is scrubbed out thoroughly enough, the house becomes desirable again. That is not a property management decision. That is something else entirely. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because when this story broke, it did not land the way certain people may have anticipated. There was no public outpouring of sympathy for the institution. No chorus of voices saying Harry and Meghan should feel embarrassed. The dominant response across comment sections and forums and social media was something closer to collective bemusement. And then people started thinking about where Harry and Meghan actually live now, because while Frogmore sits empty and expensive in Windsor, Harry and Meghan have a home in Montecito, California. Expansive grounds, a pool, a tennis court. A home they purchased, not gifted by an institution that could revoke it at will, not contingent on their behavior or their silence or their proximity to power. Theirs. And the contrast between those two images, the costly vacant cottage being expensively cleansed of their presence versus the peaceful, thriving life they have built freely across the Atlantic, did not go unnoticed. People saw it immediately. And when they wrote about it, they were not writing in grief. So let us hear what people are actually saying, because this is where the real pulse of the story lives. One person wrote, That is the best news Harry and Meghan have received in years. Frogmore Cottage was a prison for them. I know, right? And that word choice matters. Prison. Because what is a home where you cannot feel genuinely safe? What is a gift that arrives with invisible conditions, with institutional surveillance, and a system that briefed against you in private while publicly performing warmth? A gift like that is not freedom. And leaving it, even being pushed out of it, turned out to be the opening towards something real. Another person said they paid to renovate it, they paid it back, they got evicted, and now the crown might spend more to undo what they paid for. Yeah, that is the full ledger in one sentence, written more clearly than most formal coverage managed across entire articles and multiple paragraphs. How irrelevant are Harry and Meghan again? Someone else wrote, millions to reverse a revamp. Imagine spending that on something that actually helps people. And that point travels somewhere most coverage did not follow. At a moment when public trust in institutions is genuinely fragile, when ordinary people are asking where money goes and why, this particular expenditure raises questions that go well beyond the personal story of any specific couple. Another comment, and this one I want to stay with for a second. They are assets, no matter how hard you try to make them disappear. There is a quiet truth in that sentence, no drama in it, no hyperbole, just an honest observation about what certain people leave behind wherever they go. Some people elevate spaces. Some people make rooms, homes, institutions better simply for having been in them. That kind of presence does not simply vanish when someone walks out the door. And then this one genuinely made me smile. Have they actually looked at Harry and Meghan's home in California? Have they looked at it? Because we have. We absolutely have. And the lawn alone tells a story about who landed well. Do you see what they did there? One final comment, and it is the one that lingers. History is going to record what actually happened here. No renovation reverses that. Yet the historical record of Frogmore Cottage will not be shaped by what the walls look like after the construction crew finishes. It will be exactly what it is. The home given as a gift, renovated, paid back, and taken away. That is what endures in the record. No amount of building work changes that sentence. Now I want to go somewhere deeper for a moment, because underneath the property dispute and the cost estimates and the logistics of architectural reversal, this story is actually about something much older and more human than any of that. It is about what it means to truly belong somewhere, and what it costs to discover that the welcome you were offered was conditional from the very beginning. What we know publicly is that Meghan arrived into this family as a woman who had already built something real and substantial entirely on her own, a career, a global platform, a recognized identity that existed long before any of this. She walked through those doors accomplished, and what she encountered documented now across multiple sources and her own words and Harry's memoir was a system that struggled to fully make room for who she actually was, that briefed against her, that did not protect her when protection was needed. Harry watched that happen to someone he had chosen. He watched it unfold inside an institution he had been formed by since birth, and he made a considered decision. A man who understood that system from the inside, who had been shaped by it his entire life, looked clearly at what it was doing to his family and chose something different. He always knew what the system was, but choosing to leave it, choosing love and ordinary peace over inherited proximity to power, that is, a man acting with full clarity on what he knows. And so, when this institution now moves, years later, to remove the last physical traces of that choice, what it reveals publicly is not strength. Harry and Meghan move forward completely visibly. They built something new and have not looked back. The empty house in Windsor is a record of who was unable to do the same. Remember at the very start, I told you there was one detail that most people completely missed. Here it is. The erasure plan, as reported, is contingent on the erasure actually working. The source said someone might want to live at Frogmore if any trace of Harry and Meghan is removed. Think carefully about what that concedes. It concedes that years after they left, their presence in that property is still so felt, so vivid in the public imagination, so woven into the way that address is understood by the world that it shapes who is willing to move in at all. You do not spend money removing things that carry no weight. You erase things that are still too present to be ignored. In trying to remove them, the institution has made the loudest possible argument about how significant their footprint truly remains, and let us be honest about something, because it belongs in this story. Meghan was targeted in ways that went well beyond standard scrutiny. She arrived more accomplished, more globally recognized, more established on her own terms than many who had walked through those doors before her, and for certain quarters of that world, that was threatening. The pattern of what followed, recorded across many sources and many years, tells its own story. Harry saw it clearly. He chose her, and that choice has never once been reversed. This is exactly what Princess Diana wanted for her son. She longed for a life like the one he has found, filled with genuine love, with peace, with the freedom to be exactly who you are, without a system scripting every breath you take. A freedom she herself was never fully given. I know she is looking down from above, so incredibly proud of the man he has become, of the choice he made, of the love he chose and has never let go of, against every prediction, against every smear campaign, against every planted story, and every commentator who said they would not survive it. Harry and Meghan are still here, still thriving, still building something in California that resonates with millions of real people around the world who understand exactly what it costs to choose yourself over a system that does not fully see you. The cottage in Windsor will eventually be renovated. Someone will eventually move in. The rooms will be divided and repainted, and the visible traces will be gone. But the story attached to that address is already written, in ink that no building permit reverses. And in Montecito, the life Harry and Meghan are living is not a consolation. It is the destination. It was always the destination. The peace, the family, the freedom, built on their own terms. That is what they were moving toward, even in the moments that felt like loss. We can see it now with complete clarity. We always knew. One of those houses holds a family that chose each other against everything. The other has been empty for over 2 years. That contrast has already told us everything we needed to know. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the Frogmore reversal plan says more about the institution's inability to move past Harry and Meghan? Or does it say more about how completely Harry and Meghan have already moved on from that world? Drop your answer in the comments below. I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.